Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Masricha. It is Friday, March 20th. We are kicking off the show today with a bit of a recap on what the big robotics insights were that came out of Nvidia's GTC conference this week. We'll then pivot to some exclusive reporting, the information published about a robotics acquisition that Amazon has made. This week on the Editor's Cut, we're talking about the White House's AI policy framework released today, and also the big headlines from Nvidia, Meta, Amazon, and also AI startups this week. And we'll wrap the show with our big read. The Information's Microsoft reporter wrote an excellent profile on Asha Sharma, the company's new CEO of its $24 billion gaming business. It's going to be a fun show, so let's get right on into it. It was a big week of news this week coming out of Nvidia's GTC. And while chips and agents and autonomous vehicles have gotten a lot of attention, robotics is one area that hasn't been talked about as much. Our AI reporter, Rocket Drew, had a conversation with Nvidia's robotics chief at the event, and I want to bring him on to debrief all of that. Rocket, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Akash. Great to be here.
Was it your first GTC this week?
It was, and it was quite a scene. Have you ever been?
No, never.
I recommend it, just for the anthropology of it all.
Yeah, not the anthropic of it all.
Not this time.
Um, I saw a funny, it's Friday. I'm just gonna tell the story. There was a funny
Please.
tweet. Somebody was standing in front of Anthropology, the retail store, and said, "Going to try out Claude." And I thought it was a very funny joke. Okay, let's talk robotics. So you had a conversation with NVIDIA's robotics chief, and it's kind of interesting. I haven't heard too much about the robotics insights that have come out of GTC. What were the big questions that you went into this conversation with? And then we'll talk a little bit about what you learned.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of robotics news out of GTC this year. And in fact, a couple of roboticists I spoke to felt like robotics was a little bit overshadowed by some other action at the conference. Chips, of course, but you would expect that given that's Nvidia's, whole business. But also the open claw craze, like digital agents that work on your computer stole the spotlight from robotics a little bit. So I think some roboticists had that impression coming out of Jensen's keynote that he was playing down robotics a little bit, and had the same impression walking around the expo floor and seeing the actual robotic demonstrations that were on display. Now, it's only fair. I mean, CES was a couple months ago, and that has become such a robotics show. So I think for some people, that set the expectation. They wanted GTC to be just as robotics heavy as CES, and then it sort of fell short of the mark. But there were a few small announcements out of the conference. So one of those is that NVIDIA produces physical AI models. One of those is Cosmos, which is a world model that generates, say, videos, sort of physically realistic videos mostly. And then they have Groot, which is a physical AI model for powering humanoid robots. So at this conference, they released customized versions of those, Cosmos H and Groot H, which are customized to work specifically on healthcare data, for example, to power surgical robots. So they've collected a bunch of surgery data, they've customized the models on that surgery data, and now they've open sourced them. So it's a little bit niche, but those were some of the bigger robotics announcements out of the conference.
Okay. So they make these announcements, and the conversation that you have with the robotics chief, is this a press conference? This is a one-on-one interview?
Yeah, this was a one-on-one. They smuggled me through a hotel and through a back hallway and into this room where we waited silently in a corridor. And then I got whisked into this room, and there was this conference room in a hotel kind of on the outskirts of the conference. So we had a conversation there for about half an hour. And one of my first questions going in was, have agents kind of stolen the show? And one of the things that I came to realize over the course of the conversation is that, well, there's a way to look at it where AI agents will also be a boon to robotics. There are ways that AI agents can speed up progress in robotics. So roboticists should also feel like they can benefit to some extent from the progress that's happening in agents and all of the excitement around OpenClaw.
How is the explain that? I mean, I'm just wrapping my head around agents.
Yeah.
Now the agents are going to control robots too?
That was exactly my question. Well, what tipped me off to begin with that this was, sort of a possibility was that walking through the expo hall, they had a demonstration where they showed off, here's how OpenClaw, though in this case it was NemoClaw, which is NVIDIA's version. Here's how it can help you file your taxes. It had access to some tax documents. You ask it questions. And the way they spiced up this demonstration is they had a Reachy mini robot. They're about like yay tall, maybe a little under a foot tall, 3D printed looking robots from Hugging Face with these cute little antennas. And the way they gave you this demonstration of the OpenClaw agent running on your computer was that you talk about your taxes to this robot. It's like they didn't have to do that, but it was a way that the agent sort of took on a physical presence. So I was like, okay, like maybe there's some kind of connection going on here. So asking about that, I think the two main connections that came to light are one, you could use these kinds of computer using agents or coding agents like Claude Code and Codex to develop the robotic models, to gather the training data, to run simulations, to train the models, to test the models. Like the coding agents can take on some of the role of what a researcher or an engineer in robotics does today to develop these models. So that's one thing, and maybe speed up that process a little bit. And the second is that in the future, you could imagine one agent, say, running a fleet of robots in a warehouse. And when a task comes in, like, oh man, we got all these orders, we got to get them from all these shelves into all these boxes, an agent could coordinate some of that work. It could say, okay, you humanoid robot, you're going to take this job. And you robot dog, you're going to walk around the perimeter and make sure everyone's doing it. And you could coordinate the robots and you could make sure they're sharing information with each other. And that's sort of a future direction that agents could go as well.
So, I mean, these are all very grand ambitions that I think are very exciting. The idea that, hey, we right now have these smart speakers, and that's sort of the closest we have to talking to a robot in real time. Now we're saying, hey, you have a robot that can do things for you. Maybe I can talk to the Roomba and tell it to, I don't know, do like a Strava like formation on the floor and actually be productive. Fine, I get it. Did you ask her any questions about where the technology is today? Who's actually paying for these tools? Whether or not NVIDIA's chips are good enough to support these workloads right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone sort of acknowledges that it's early, that we're in the early innings of this game. But NVIDIA is happy to start supporting the ecosystem, even though it's early. That's sort of the way they would position it. So, yeah, again, I was talking to Deepu Talla, who is NVIDIA's vice president of robotics and edge AI. He's sort of NVIDIA's most senior robotics head. And I asked him the same question, especially for Cosmos, this world model that can generate videos. It's a really exciting direction. We've been hearing a lot of enthusiasm for world models for a while, but often we also hear that they're just not quite there yet. They're not realistic enough in the videos that they generate to, say, train a robot that could then transfer into working in the real world. So I asked him the same question, when is it going to get there? And his answer is it really depends on the customer. Cosmos can generate different kinds of videos, it can generate different kinds of data, and depending on the customer's needs, it might be there already, especially if they just want to tinker around with it for research purposes, or it might take a little while to get there. But I think NVIDIA has been making these kinds of long-term plays for a while. For example, in self-driving, which has been an interest for the company for a decade, even though they're just now declaring that self-driving has hit a sort of chat GPT moment. So
Right.
I think that inflection point could still be delayed for a number of years, but they want to make some early progress in that direction.
I wonder, as you think about your week at GTC more broadly, what were the questions that you didn't quite get as many answers to, or the further questions that you walked away with saying, hey, I'm seeing a lot of potential here. I see the inference chips. I see Nemo Claw. Maybe I'm unclear on customer adoption. Maybe I'm unclear on business model. I mean, what sort of questions did you walk away with wanting more information on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Well, one thing was that there was a lot of enthusiasm for NemoClaw, which is OpenClaw or it was NVIDIA's version of OpenClaw. But one of the selling points is that it should be relatively easy to set up on your computer relative to OpenClaw. Like some of the pain of setting up the software should just be taken care of for you. And I haven't seen that myself yet. So I walked away wondering, how easy is it really to set up this software, especially when during the conference, Anthropic announced Dispatch, which is a similar feature for Claude Cowork, where you can sort of start jobs from your phone and it'll work on them on your computer and so on, which is one of the key selling points of OpenClaw. So I went to the tent, the Build a Claw tent, like a sort of Build a Bear that NVIDIA was hosting, and they had a lot of NVIDIA employees there helping conference goers set up NemoClaw on their devices and show conference goers how they could use NemoClaw. And a couple of my takeaways there were, one, people feel kind of hesitant to set it up themselves. They want to know what it can do for them first. They need someone to sit down and hold their hand and walk them through. These are some different ways you could use it. And then two, in setting it up, they seem to want some support from NVIDIA. It's not the most straightforward thing. And then three, to set it up, many people were either bringing their own specialized computers or buying them right on the spot from NVIDIA. So that's another question on my mind of how much people will really adopt NemoClaw or these personal agents in general right now, if it requires getting a Mac Mini or buying an NVIDIA DGX Spark. Now, some conference goers were happy to buy those computers. I heard that the gift store sold out of these DGX Spark computers on the first day, and then NVIDIA employees stayed up all night installing NemoClaw on some other computers. And then the next day, before the end of the day, someone told me they had sold out of 31 of them. And these things cost thousands of dollars. So people are interested in being able to use it, but I'm curious how hard it will be for them to set up in practice.
Great. Well, Rocket, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Rocket Drew, our AI and robotics reporter here at The Information.
Thanks, Akash.
The Information published exclusive reporting that Amazon has acquired autonomous robotics startup River. Joining me now to discuss that story is Catherine Perloff, one of the reporters behind that piece. Catherine, welcome to the show. It's great to have you back.
Hey.
Okay, what is River, the robotics company?
So River, they make these robots that they kind of look like I don't know, like kind of like they look like little four-legged animals, I guess. They're kind of like a long box on top of legs with wheels that helps them navigate stairs and pathways. They're designed for last mile delivery. So, you know, getting the package from the vehicle it's being delivered in to the door. And they've previously had partnerships with Just Eat Takeaway, which is a food delivery company, and Viho, which is also in the delivery logistics space. But now they're being acquired by Amazon.
Okay. And the idea here is, I mean, they're autonomous, so, like, do they get released in fleets and then they pick up the orders and then drop them off? Is that the idea?
So they can't drive cars.
No, I know that. I mean, the ca I I understand that. I mean, but they just get dropped off by in fleets and then they go crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be a fleet. It might just be like I guess that's the question. I'm not exactly sure how they'd be deployed. It might be like one in a car, maybe it'd be two in a car. But the idea is like the driver could go drop off a package to one house and then like the river robot could go to a different house at the same time and then you could deliver more packages quicker or
Right.
something like that.
Okay. Where like, tell me about Amazon's robotics strategy at large. How does this fit into that? Has it made other acquisitions in the past that this is planning to be added to?
Yeah, so Amazon has a long history in robotics. It has actually previously invested in the company via this thing called like their industrial fund, where they invest in a lot of robotics companies. I think what makes the River kind of acquisition a little bit unique is a lot of the companies they've acquired and invested in have been more on the logistics side of things. And so, or sorry, this is I guess in the warehouses, I should say. So like, helping, move boxes, pack boxes, et cetera, and a little bit less in the delivery side of the process. I guess they did invest in Rivian, which is an like electric vehicle company. They make electric trucks. Then Rivian is, developing self-driving capabilities. Uh, Amazon also is behind Zoox, which is a self-driving robotaxi, but that's really more for, like, people taking rides than it is for packages and delivery. So this is sort of like a delivery-focused, robotics acquisition, and I think their previous efforts, have more been about robots in the warehouses, robots in the factories, and also robotics, like the AI behind the robots, the software and the models behind the robots.
And how does the company ultimately talk about its ambition with robots and autonomous vehicles even? Because the delivery personnel that Amazon has, I mean, it's a huge part of their workforce, right? I mean, they are known to have people in every corner of the world delivering things. Are they openly saying we want to replace them to lower costs, or what do they say about that?
Yeah, certainly not openly. I feel like they're very sensitive about this. The statement they gave to us about the acquisition was kind of like the robots will work with our delivery drivers. And it's always a kind of an interesting question with robotics, like can it make things safer for the people? But and I think also at this stage to develop this robotics, and also, to develop the AI behind the robotics can be really expensive. So, in some ways it can be a cost center, but do I think they look down the line and say, "Can we employ less people?" I mean, also with their delivery drivers, they don't even directly employ them. It's through this kind of controversial contracting model. So, I think they're probably safe to say they're looking to cut costs. But I would, maybe not people totally out of the loop yet.
And last question for you. I mean, what is your assessment of Amazon in the robotics arena? Are they very much ahead of the curve on this? Do you think that they will get to it faster than, for example, I know Tesla has had robot ambitions. They're much bigger, but it seems to me like Amazon actually has an application to use the robots in a way that's not like actually developing humanoids, for example.
Yeah, I think that Amazon is actually very advanced in robotics. They've been at it for like almost a decade, but I think unlike some of these other companies, they're not really trying to sell their robots as like enterprise offerings to other businesses. They want to use them for themselves so far. So I think it's kind of hard to like compare them in some ways to Tesla, which I think is trying to be sort of like a robotics powerhouse, where it's like I think Amazon kind of sees robotics as more of accentuating its existing e-commerce business, and they use them in other ways, like in AWS data centers, for example.
Right.
But yeah, remains to be seen. I mean, they definitely are actually quite, I think, a lot more advanced than people know about.
Well, I mean, but to your point, I mean that I don't know the exact history of AWS, but I mean that seemed to have been a project that I don't know if they ever thought they were going to sell it externally, but conceivably it was something that they did to help their own business first, and then they figured out that it could turn into a business down the line. So
Yes,
one to
that's
watch. I
true.
get
Yes, totally. Yeah, I mean, they like making money, so, um
okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Catherine. I appreciate you coming on. That is Catherine Perloff, our Amazon reporter here at the Information. Aside from GTC, a number of big tech companies like Amazon and Meta made headlines this week with new revenue projections and new cloud deals. We also had more AI startups raising big funding rounds. This morning, the White House also released its new framework for AI legislation. This week on the Editor's Cut, we are going to break down all of that. I want to bring on our co executive editor, Martin Pierce, and our managing editor, Laura Mendero. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you back.
Hi,
Hey,
Akash.
Akash.
Martin, what did you make of the National AI Legislative Framework out this morning?
It's a very nice statement of ideals that I don't think means very much. I mean, it basically, if you read this, it says AI, we want parents to control AI for their children. We want creators to be protected. We want to encourage innovation. It doesn't mention they want AI to cure cancer and they want AI to end poverty, but you get the idea that that's what they're going for. But right at the end, they mentioned, oh, by the way, we don't want any of the states to regulate AI, which is what this is all about. And the problem they're going to have is that there's obviously a lot of unhappiness and distrust among regular people about what AI will bring. It's turning into a political issue for the White House. Um, and you can see that when you have people like, Ron the Santis, the Florida governor, out there really pushing for controls on AI. the White House is really taking the side of the tech industry, and I think the tech industry's interest in AI are not the same as regular people. The tech industry sees this as a way to make a huge amount of money, and this I think that this is just starting off what's going to be a fair amount of of uh, debate.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
Laura, every time the White House comes out with these types of executive orders, statements, frameworks, I mean, we've seen a couple of these, I think, in the AI era. We also saw them in the crypto era, when the government was coming out saying, hey, here's how we're thinking about it. I seem to remember that people in Silicon Valley, venture capitalists online, I mean, a lot of them, I think they get pretty excited about these things, right? They say, "Oh, they're we're getting on board with it."
yeah, I don't know what the reaction is to this one. I mean, I don't. It does not strike me that that is their target audience. I was reading this one and then comparing it to the executive order in December, and it's quite telling that the first couple points are about electricity and children, and it seems very geared towards the populace, maybe ahead of the midterm elections, and speaking to the things that are on people's minds, particularly power prices. I mean, it already was an issue last year, and I think with the oil shock will be maybe even more of an issue. So the specifics about how to regulate AI or not were lower down. I mean, they were there, obviously, and the administration does want to quash these state laws, which keep popping up. Um, One interesting point is I think there's this dynamic around guardrails. I mean, some of the state laws have attempted to put some guardrails or even require certain models to get approval from the government, which definitely Silicon Valley does generally not like, because they would say it would slow the pace of innovation, and that is all to prevent sort of catastrophic issues rising from these AI models. And the policy framework does, kind of note, maybe we should have a guardrail to make sure there's not kind of censoring going on in the models. That is contrary to the ideology that the administration espouses. So there is a little bit of a dynamic: as are some guardrails actually okay or not? But I didn't think that was the main point of this policy framework. It seemed very much addressed to the ordinary person who may blame AI for various things.
Hmm. And Martin, do you think it's effective in quashing those concerns for the
No,
ordinary person?
no, not at all. I mean, people don't, read these things, and they certainly don't believe what they hear from the government. I think what will really, it's how people actually use AI and what they hear about the impact of it. I mean, everybody is concerned about jobs. That's obviously one of the biggest issues. And also, there's the whole issue about AI making it easier for hackers to take over your, bank accounts. That's the thing that I hear about. I think ordinary people are very concerned about all the issues with AI and how it will hurt them. And I think this is the one of the issues for tech, is that there's a enormous disconnect between regular people and the tech industry, where ordinary people do not like the implications of AI.
Well, okay, Laura. So Martin makes a good point here. I mean, ordinary people, they have issues with it. We just and I mean, not even ordinary people. We saw that the companies themselves this week, Meta, we reported, had the security incident with its own agent going rogue, and yet, I mean, the hyperscalers, the venture capitalists, everyone is pouring money into it. What do you think?
Well, I think there are two things. I also think that, I mean, I live in Silicon Valley, but I talk to a lot of people who are not in the tech industry in my personal life, and it is interesting. People are using AI. It's very peripheral, right? It's not something that is as useful as their smartphone, but I mean, people are using it and liking parts of it. So
Laura lives in Silicon Valley. Can I just remind you of that?
yeah, but not everybody is
She
working for a
doesn't
big tech company
inhabit the
around here
real world. I'm in the real world. Laura's not.
in Manhattan.
I
Um,
was going to say in Manhattan.
I no, but I mean, people are starting to use these things for, like, asking for relationship advice or something like that, right? It's peripheral.
Those are
They're not
not normal people, though, Laura.
also they're not paying, I would say.
Those are
Um,
not normal people. Anyone who's using it to ask for that, they're not. They're a little
I don't
bit.
know. I don't know. But
I think more people
I
do
beg
it,
to
Martin.
dis
People do this stuff. I'm
Look, all
telling
I
you.
can tell you is that everyone that I know, which is the real world, they are not.
Okay, all right. So let's put Mr. Manhattan just away for a minute. Laura, what are you? What are
Everybody
your
that I know
friends?
in Manhattan here.
Your friends that you're talking to, not in Silicon Valley. What do they say?
they're they're kind of like bemused, right? It's like a new toy and they're like, yeah, actually it was pretty good for this, specific instance. It's a lightweight use. It certainly doesn't, maybe back up the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being invested in it. Clearly that is going towards a much more a business use, right? The coding assistance, the speed of developing the software. The consumer use is, at least that anecdotally, and I'm a very small pool of people, but it's they're like, oh, I tested, yeah, yeah, that was pretty good, So, but anyway, I think the more the point is that you were trying to get at, Akash, is why are venture capitalists still so excited? And I think that interesting. There was a couple interesting data points from this week's coverage. One, Julia Hornstein, our new VC reporter, was at a conference with a ton of VCs, some limited partners, which are the investors in VC funds, and founders. And there has been this perennial like concern over the last couple of years that software that's built on top of the big models from OpenAI and Anthropic could get disintermediated by the model makers themselves because they can also build software and and their costs should be lower because they don't have to, they're basically supplying the fuel to the engine of these software companies. Yet we've seen so many of these apps uh, grow quickly, raise valuations, money at very high valuations over and over again. So it was interesting to hear that investors are still concerned. And, it's not like they're not investing, but nobody can believe quite how fast the revenue is growing at some of these companies. It'll double to like 200 million ARR, 500 million, within several months, if much faster than enterprise software companies had in the past. But then they're worried, are the businesses that are trying these are mostly like business to business companies, are they getting, are they, are they going to just bolt once the contract is up? So, I mean,
So let me ask you this, and Martin. I mean, Laura's raising the point here about the startups and the durability of the revenue the startups are seeing. I mean, isn't that also a question for some of these bigger tech companies too, possibly?
Sorry, I'm not clear on the question.
Well, I'm talking about Laura's making the point that venture capitalists are they're a little afraid that, hey, what after the pilot projects will they renew for, the extended 3-year contract that we want? My question is the public tech companies that are selling all these AI subscription services, et cetera, is there not the same risk there, or because they're bigger tech companies, do they maybe have a leg up on that?
Again, I'm not really clear what you're asking, but look, if you're asking whether or not the big tech companies are as exposed to the uncertainty, of course they are. Um, there is some evidence that businesses are really starting to use AI. I think, though, that it's very limited to certain things like coding. I mean, I know my own experience. I'm certainly using it, but what I am finding is that it's not reliable because when it pulls certain information and you look into that, you often find that it makes mistakes, and you cannot rely on it. I think that is a big pro- problem. I'm not sure when they will be able to really resolve that issue. So, yeah.
I mean, Akash, I think for our readers and listeners, one of the more telling examples I think we wrote about this week was actually in the Applied AI newsletter. Aaron Holmes interviewed the CIO of Cohesity. It's a enterprise software company. And he was basically like, yes, we still are using these big enterprise software vendors like ServiceNow, but they have these add-ons that automate certain functions, and those are the things that we're considering not paying extra for because we had some kind of cloud alternative. So it's a much more nuanced, explanation. They're not dumping the entire contract, which is how the stock market has reacted, but they're not maybe doing the extra additional add-on, which for a feature, an automation feature, which AI can apparently do, or he has this anecdote of one of their executives sort of vibe coding an alternative. And so, I think if you were an enterprise software CEO reading that, you would be worried, right? Like this is maybe where the growth would be. That is not going to continue, or if you're an investor in that company, but it's not, you're dumping it all together. And so, I mean, I think that just speaks to the AI is a risk to a lot of these companies' business, but it's not overnight
Well, hang
that
on a
you'll
second,
just lose it.
though, Laura. It's a risk. AI is a risk to some companies' businesses, but
Yeah.
maybe not in the way that you're talking about. It's a risk if you have an agent that goes out of control, and as we've seen this week, right?
Yeah,
Man,
well, that's a different risk.
issues.
That's a
So
different risk. I'm
no,
saying
but
about
I think
talking about the tech
I
vendors.
I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about, but my
yeah.
point is that this is going to be the issue. Some of these companies will try it out as they are doing, but are they going to discover that it goes crazy and screws things up? I just think that things are really too early, and we shouldn't believe the tech hype. We really have to step out of the bubble of the valley and look at what ordinary people and businesses are actually doing.
Like
Okay.
people in Manhattan, Laura.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us from Manhattan and from Silicon Valley. That is Martin Pierce and Laura Mandera, our editors here at The Information. The departure of Microsoft's longtime gaming head, Phil Spencer, earlier this year left some big shoes to fill at the Xbox parent company. The gaming landscape has also been growing more difficult, with Xbox console sales having declined for years now. It all means that Asha Sharma, who Satya Nadella has tapped to lead this new generation for the gaming business, has her work cut out for her. But in some ways, she could be exactly the person to help lead this team through the intersection of AI and gaming. For this weekend's Big Read, our Microsoft reporter Aaron Holmes profiled Asha, and I want to bring him on to tell us more about her story. Aaron, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so before we get to Asha, I want to ask you about the gaming sector at large. I was surprised Xbox console sales have been declining.
Yeah, so I think that's something that we've seen across the entire industry is that console sales have been falling. Consoles themselves are generally pretty expensive, and the market for people who are willing to spend that much on a console doesn't seem to be growing. And at the same time, there is sort of a growing market for people who are playing mobile games, and there's also sort of these newer incumbents or newcomers like Netflix that's trying to get people to play games on connected TVs. So basically, the place that people play games seems to be shifting, and Xbox, which has historically relied on consoles, is trying to figure out, what its place will be in that potential new ecosystem.
Now, but the Xbox business itself, has that business been growing?
So it's been a
Or the
little
game
bit
the
spotty.
gaming business, I guess.
So it's yeah, I mean, Xbox itself has seen some mixed results. They spent $75 billion to acquire Activision about 3 years ago, and the year after that, they actually missed their internal targets for Xbox revenue. That then last year they did slightly exceed internal targets. So it's been a little bit hit or miss. But in general, I think that the goal now with the new leadership is, of course, to grow that revenue even faster and also continue to improve the profit margins in Xbox.
Okay, and before we get to Asha Sharma, I just want to talk about Phil Spencer, the longtime head of the gaming business. Why did he step down this year? Do we know?
So there's a few reasons. I mean, for one, Phil Spencer has been in his role for something like 38 years, and definitely, is reaching sort of the end of his career and decided that he wanted to retire. But I think at the same time, Satya Nadella did want new leadership in Xbox and specifically wanted to bring in an outsider who might have, a fresh perspective on the business. So at the same time that Phil Spencer stepped down, we also saw his deputy, Sarah Bond, the president of Xbox, also stepped down and essentially kind of have a clean slate of new leadership coming into Xbox.
Okay, so enter Asha Sharma. How did Satya Nadella find Asha? Why did he decide to tap her to lead the unit?
Well, Asha Sharma is an interesting pick because she doesn't really have any experience leading, a gaming business. Her most recent role at Microsoft for the last couple of years has been selling AI to developers. So, selling the AI models and tools that developers would use to build applications on Microsoft's Azure cloud service. And apparently, in that role, she sort of caught the attention of her boss, Jay Parikh, as well as Satya Nadella, for helping to grow the revenue of GitHub Copilot. Before that, she actually does have a background in consumer and software brands like Meta and Instacart. She was an executive at both of those companies, and I think that sort of burnishes her resume a bit to lead Xbox as a consumer brand, although it's obviously a very different type of business than either of those.
Right. But, what kind of stood out to me from the reporting that you did in your story was it actually seems like she, in many ways, is very well positioned to lead Xbox or the gaming unit through this AI era where it seems like people could develop their own games very quickly.
That's a very active debate, and it's actually something that a lot of people inside Xbox, as well as founders of Xbox and loyal gamers, are worried about. There's actually a lot of fear right now that there's going to be this push to, replace game development with AI entirely, or try to use AI to cut down on the costs that go into crafting high-end video games. And one thing that we've seen so far is that Asha Sharma has pushed back on that. She actually promised, we're not going to replace game development with AI slop. She has said internally that she only wants game studios to use AI when they want to. There's not going to be any mandate that they have to use AI in game development. So I think she's actually working pretty hard to kind of counter that idea that AI is going to replace the way that games have been made so far.
Has she made any other bold claims about her ambitions for the unit? Any other big changes she wants to make?
So broadly, she has said that she wants to sort of re-embrace the Xbox console, and she signaled that she wants to invest more in basically building the next generation of Xbox, which Microsoft has teased could start to come out as soon as next year. And I think one thing that is interesting is her predecessors had this whole marketing push where they were saying it was called "This is an Xbox," and it showed people playing games on their phone, playing games on their tablet, on their PC, implying that the console itself didn't really matter. And that campaign actually kind of annoyed a lot of people inside of Xbox, as well as loyalists who love the console. And one of the things that Asha did in her first month on the job is completely scrap that marketing campaign and scrub it from the internet. And obviously, a marketing campaign is just one tiny kind of piece of the business, but I think that move signals that she is very sensitive to the criticism that Xbox might have lost sight of its console roots, and I think that she wants to reestablish, that the fact that the console is central to the business while also pursuing these gamers on other platforms like mobile.
Now, you had a conversation with Netflix's co-CEO, Greg Peters. Why did you reach out to him for this story, and what did he end up telling you about Asha?
Yeah, so I essentially heard that Greg Peters was somebody who Asha has been talking to since taking on the role. There's some obvious reasons for that. Xbox and Netflix have content licensing partnerships, like they're doing a Netflix series based on Minecraft, which is an Xbox property. But he told me that he has been kind of impressed by the fact that Asha wants to invest more in Xbox and like take risks and go into growth mode after the company has somewhat been in a defensive posture for several years. And he also said that they've kicked around ideas about other ways that Netflix and Xbox could partner. I mean, like I said, Netflix has this captive audience of people playing games on their connected TVs, which could be potentially an audience that Xbox would want to reach with its own subscription gaming service.
Can I ask you, Aaron, do you play video games? Did you have an Xbox growing up?
I did not. I don't have an Xbox, but I do have a Nintendo Switch too. And yeah, I play games here and there.
Okay, so but would you call yourself an avid gamer?
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that.
Okay. Okay, well, this is good because I don't play any video games at all. So you're gonna help us out with this. So as a gamer, or maybe as someone who has spoken to gamers, I mean, what is the general vibe around this moment for Microsoft's gaming business? I mean, are you bullish on it? Are gamers bullish on it? We have this threat of AI. Sure, people are worried about the slop, but I mean, help me understand. Like as a user of these products, does this feel like it could be a good thing or a kind of a worrisome thing?
So I think one thing that I definitely heard from, Xbox loyalists, is that in recent years, the Xbox business has felt very obviously like it's trying to kind of make business decisions instead of necessarily making decisions that feel like investments in games. So, for example, Xbox has this Game Pass subscription, which is marketed to users when they open their Xbox console. It's become a bit more integrated with like the broader Microsoft ecosystem. You need a Microsoft account to access certain Xbox features, and that's been something that gamers have been loudly complaining about for years. Obviously, there's really good business reasons for Microsoft to want to do all of that, but I think that one thing that Asha has recognized so far is that Xbox needs to walk that tightrope between growing its business and finding new ways to make money in games from people like mobile gamers who don't care about consoles, while still not alienating the sort of core audience that has been Xbox's main base of customers for years.
And so you obviously reached out to Microsoft for comment for an interview. I'm sure for a story like this, you didn't get the interview you wanted, but if you did have Asha for half an hour, what would be the questions you would want to ask her?
I mean, I would love, even more details on what we're going to see from Project Helix, which is the sort of code name for the next console, which she has teased a bit publicly. We currently don't know exactly, what shape that console will take, and some people have speculated that it could be something like, a Steam Deck, which is essentially a device that lets you play PC games on your TV or on a handheld device. And yeah, I'm really curious sort of what specifically the hardware vision will be to sort of meld those worlds of a high performance console as well as more kind of flexible game streaming device.
Great. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Aaron Holmes, our Microsoft reporter here at The Information. That does it for today's show. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. Make sure to subscribe to The Information on YouTube and follow us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. I'm already excited for our next show on Monday. Have a great rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. Bye-bye for now.